I think that being strategic may be one of your most useful tools to use in creating the life that you want to have. Lucky for us, being strategic is learnable. Most of us kind of try and wander toward solutions in our lives without ever having clarified the problem that we're trying to solve. In my mind, the way to make this really useful and valuable to yourself is to make it a habit of mind and action. And that's what I want for you. I want you to keep learning and to create the lives that you most want to have. Welcome everybody, I'm thrilled to be here, and I hope to make this time that we have together as valuable as possible. I want to share with you a process and a set of skills that can help you create the life, the future, the business, the career, the relationship that you most want for yourself. So let me start by asking you a question. How many of you over the last couple of months have heard the word strategic? It could have been in a business meeting, it could have been at a kid's fundraising committee meeting. You know, you hear at work, strategic or being strategic. Show of hands. How many? Most people. Okay. Very common phrase. We hear it all the time. Okay, let me ask you another question. How many times when the person using that word used it, did they explain to you what they meant by it? Well, a couple of times. Doesn't happen very often. We rarely explain it, and yet we mean lots of different things by it. If you think about it, right? People use that phrase, being strategic, to mean stuff all the way from thinking about the competition or focusing on the big picture to sometimes people actually mean that guy thinks like me. He's really strategic. He has the same point of view I do, right? Although they don't say that out loud. Okay, so here's this really important thing. I agree that it's important. We talk about it all the time, but we really don't have a common definition. So I believe that being strategic means consistently making those core directional choices that will best move you toward your hoped-for future. Now, this is a deceptively simple sentence. There's actually a lot in here. First, you look at that interesting phrase, hoped-for future. So it implies that in order to be strategic, you have to know where you're going. You have to have a future that you want to create. Then there's another interesting phrase here, core directional choices. And it's hard to make core directional choices towards something unless you know where you're starting from. So there's all kinds of stuff in here. It implies you know where you're starting from, you know where you're trying to get to, and then you're going to make some core choices to get there. And then finally, there's that interesting word, consistently. Consistently making those core directional choices. So what this implies is that there's a capability to be built here. The capability to see where you're wanting to go, see where you're starting from, make some core choices, and then consistently act according to those choices. Okay, so most successful people I know, and by successful I mean people who have created the lives that they want for themselves, they have and they demonstrate this capability. And I've even noticed it with young people just starting out. If I notice that they're behaving this way, I think, wow, this person is really likely to be able to create the life that he or she wants for themselves. In fact, I remember in the late 70s, there were these two young guys. You may remember them too. They were talking about computers in a really interesting way. And at the time, in the late 70s, computers, those of us who were old enough to remember, computers were, you know, mainframes and workstations. And almost the only people who had anything to do with computers were programmers and data entry people. And here came these two young guys, and they started talking about computers in a whole different way. They said, computers, we could all have computers. Everybody could have a computer. It could be fun and simple and useful. Well, a lot of you already know the punchline. These two guys were Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, and they started Apple Computers. And whether or not you've ever used an Apple computer, in a lot of ways, you're living their vision of the future, right? We now live in a world where computers are simple and easy, and sometimes they're even fun to use. So that's the power of this thing. These guys had a hopeful future, and they consistently made the choices to move toward it, and here we all are in this post-Apple world. And I know it's been true in my life too, that once I sort of identified this and started working with it, and the successes that have come to me, whether it's being able to build a business or write books or even be a great mom, have come when I have behaved in this way, when I've gotten clear about the future and moved toward it consistently. And the spectacular failures that I've had in my life, they have come when I have not behaved in that way, when I either haven't gotten clear or haven't acted consistently toward that future. Now, one thing that's important for us here, although a lot of my clients in my business are big corporations, this doesn't just apply to business. I think of it as this capability called being strategic. I think of it as being like a Swiss Army knife. You know, it's got a lot of different things on it, and you can use it in a lot of different situations. In fact, I've yet to find a part of my life where this is not a useful thing. And in fact, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Based on my experience over the last 20 years with myself and my clients, I think that being strategic may be one of your most useful tools to use in creating the life that you want to have. There's some good news. And I discovered this and it made me very happy. Lucky for us, being strategic is learnable. Now, I was really happy when I figured this out because people tend to talk about it as though it's not. People tend to talk about it as though it's kind of inborn. They talk about somebody not being strategic, like they'd say, oh, that guy can't sing, or that person's nearsighted. You know, like, too bad, you're done. But what we found is that it is learnable. It's a model and a set of skills that most people can learn. I mean, there's a natural aptitude. Some people are just better at it than other people. But almost everyone can learn this capability and improve it and improve their odds, improve their chances of creating the kind of life they want to have. I'm going to introduce you to this model and the set of skills for being strategic, but we're going to spend the next hour. And first I'll walk you through the model, and then I'll show you a picture of it. Picture's worth 1,000 words, they say. And then we'll spend the rest of our time together exploring it. And I'll give you a chance to try it out with a real situation that's meaningful to you. So you ready to do that? Ready to start honing your being strategic skills? Yeah. Okay, great, great. So here's the model. First, there's a kind of pre-step that we call defining the challenge. And the reasons that's there is that often people try to solve a problem before getting clear about what it actually is. So I'm going to give you a way to get clear, get to the heart of your challenge, and not race too soon to solving. Then once you've done that, once you're clear about the problem you're trying to address or the challenge you're trying to solve, then the first step is clarify what is. And what that means is you get clear about your current reality relative to that challenge. What do you have going for you and against you relative to that challenge? And at this point, I'm going to share with you 3 mental skills that are the core mental skills of this capability of being strategic. They'll be useful throughout this process, and I think you'll find them useful in a lot of other ways too. So once you've done that, you come to the fun part. Envision what's the hope. That's where you create in your mind the future where your challenge has been successfully addressed, where you've actually done, you've solved the problem, you've done what you've set out to do. And I'll show you a way to get really 3-dimensional about that so you can see it really clearly. That's that phrase, hope for future, that I used. Then we come to the least fun part of it, which is facing what's in the way. Every time that you try to create a new reality for yourself, there are obstacles. And I'm going to help you get clear about those and learn to assess them in an accurate way so they're not overwhelming, so you can see what they really are so that you can move past them and do the next step, which is the path. And that's the heart of this process. That's where we get to strategies. You know, remember I used that phrase, core directional choices? That's what strategies are. They're those core choices you're going to make to get from where you're going, where you are, to where you want to go. And then you fill in those strategic pathways with tactics. Tactics are like the bricks in your path. All right, so that's the whole thing. Now, some people like words, and some people like pictures. So we also have picture. See our nice shields? They have a dual purpose. They look nice, and they also are a picture of the process. So there's a hill here. Think of that as the challenge you're trying to address. It's the hill you're trying to climb. And X marks the spot. That's where you're starting from relative to your challenge, relative to your hill. Then there's your beautiful castle, your castle on the hill that you're trying to get to, that you've designed, that you've created in your mind. And then you can't see them, but there are trolls hiding in that crevice on the side of the mountain. Those are the obstacles that you're going to need to overcome, right, to get from the X to the castle. And then that's the path. Once you have all those pieces in place in your mind, you can see what that path is, first strategically and then tactically, that's going to take you from where you're starting from to the castle.